What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? I am so excited. I got some awesome guests in the studio today. It's so cool. We were just talking about out here that in Livingston County, we have got some amazing people, and the Putkelas are a part of that group. And so this is really awesome for people listening in that may be working with a spouse, or this is the very first couple that I've ever interviewed on Coffee and Grit. On Coffee and Grit, my very first podcast that I did was with the Whites. They were chiropractors out in, they are chiropractors out in Holly. But that was Business on a Bike. And so you two are the very first couple that I've had come on. And what's really cool, I was just talking with our mutual friend, Trisha Turner, on Friday, and she was like, you know, there's so many people out there that are working with their spouse, and how do you do it? How do you survive? How do you get through it? And she's like, I was talking with Angela, and I think she mentioned it to you, and it was like, it'd be really cool to do content. And I'm like, what's really funny about that is we're actually doing that on Monday. So that's awesome. So if you don't know Angela Putkela and Don Putkela, they have a podcast here as well out of the same studio called Welcome to Livingston. They do, their podcast is it sounds, the things that are going on in Livingston and the people that are putting those things on, right? Putting those things together, the movers and shakers in the community. And then they're also realtors, and they own their own real estate company, the Putkela Group. Super excited to talk about that because I know in the last year and a half, there's been some big movement with that. And so we're going to talk about a lot of really cool stuff, but what's really awesome, I've been so excited for this ever since before we scheduled it. I've been wanting to get them on because I know their podcast is a little bit different, and we're going to dive in, and because there's a really cool element, and I know I've talked to them about personal growth, personal development, and we've got a couple firewalkers in the studio today. So I'm sure we'll talk about that too. So Angela, Don, welcome to a studio that you're very familiar with.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
No, we've
Jason.
been looking forward to this a lot.
Super excited. Yeah, it's so cool. You guys don't even have to be out of place. You're in your spots. Right?
We are.
So I want to kick it off because I remember there was a really cool feature that was done here, and there may be a studio engineer that's taking care of us right now that did this awesome video cut of you guys that was talking about your story and how you met. And that's been one of the things that I've really wanted to kick off, is because, you know, you're working together now, but how did you two meet? Was it love at first sight?
Do you want to take it, or you want me to start here?
No, you go ahead and you lead.
Yeah. So, no, we exact opposite. We kind of hated each other when we met each other. So we met way back in 1992. We were working at the same bookstore in 12 Oaks Mall in Novi.
High schoolers.
High schoolers, went to different high schools, but we agitated each other immensely.
If there's ever anyone that just annoyed you and you just would be seething, like, oh, that was that person.
It was almost like you were hoping. I was hoping that she wasn't there, but I was hoping she was there so I could fight with her.
Yeah, it was really interesting, you know. And
one of the most interesting things, and I've never been able to remember her name, but it was probably 2 weeks after I started working, and a girl walked up to me and she says, two people that just met each other should not hate each other that much. You're going to end up together.
Yeah. She was one of the college kids that was working there that Christmas. And it's just kind of amazing because for our coworkers to see just the chemistry, I guess, right?
Yeah. So we went from not being friends at all to started to be friends, you know.
We mellowed as time went on. Yeah. So we were friends.
Went out to lunch every once in a while, you know, went out to see a movie and such. I actually took her to her senior prom as a friend.
Yeah. My boyfriend had broken up with me, and he and I were friends. I said, hey, you know, would you take me to my senior prom? And he said, sure. So it's kind of an interesting.
Yep. And then we fell out of touch with each other. Didn't talk to each other for...
I left for college. And
yes.
You were going to school someplace else. And
yeah, so we met back up with each other. So actually, the interesting part about the story is we saw each other in, I think 95. So we went out and we went to a park, and I was teaching her how to ride a bike because she didn't know how to ride a bike. So we had what we would call one date, but not really a date. And then we had said we were going to make plans for later in the summer, and I didn't call her to make plans. Well, 6 months later, I run into her sister where I was working at Target, and I saw her, and I go, Kathy, is Angela with you? She goes, yeah, why? I go, I think she's mad at me. So
she says, oh, she's not. She came over. You won't believe who I ran into. And I said, oh, I don't know. I'm so excited. Who could it be? She said, it's Don. And I said, oh, heck it is. I have a piece of my mind to give him.
She's not mad at you.
Not
no, I am, actually.
I marched right over there. I was like, hey, buddy.
Yeah. And so what came out of that is we set a time to go out on a date, I guess, that we weren't calling a date.
We weren't calling it a date. I had a boyfriend at the time, dude.
She did.
So it wasn't really a date. It was like, because this is an old friend and you're trying to catch up. I'm not that type of person. But so we made plans, and, I thought, this is dumb old Don. If anything was going to happen by now, it would have, because it's been years at this point, and
Yep.
I was wrong.
No, yeah, we went out on a date, and it went very quickly from there. Like, we went from like not seeing each other, not dating, to like exclusively dating.
You were like so in the friend zone, and all of a sudden, I think just that break, he swept me off my feet, literally. Like we were messing around because how old was I? 19 or 20?
You were 19.
19. So he took me over to Canada. I was like, oh, this is great. We'll go and have a good time in Canada because you can do things there you can't do here. And we were just hanging out. And so afterward, when we were walking by the riverside, I jumped on one of those little benches, and I was just kind of playing around. And all of a sudden, he scoops me from behind and then slides me so I'm nose to nose with him. And oh my gosh, like unbelievable. I just
got chills. That's
yeah.
So I had the benefit of having worked a construction job that summer. So I was in, the shape you are at 21 when you're actually like physically working. So, but I think the great thing is we had a prior relationship. So we knew each other on a different level than people who just know each other. And we knew what our quirks were and such, but we could also see how we'd gone to college separately and we changed as people. And the people we were now melded in a different way than before.
That's so cool how that can change. It's just like a game of inches, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The personal growth is just astounding. And my mom even always wanted me to date him, and I'm like, Mom. And he was a whole new person, and I was just crazy for him just immediately. So the rest was history, and we were pretty
Joined at the hip.
Yeah. No, we were around
tight.
because you were up visiting me in Michigan State very, very often, to the point where we would be out, going to places on campus, and somebody would walk up to him and ask him for directions, and he'd be able to give them directions. And my friends turn to him and go, why aren't you going to school here?
So I just transferred.
Yeah.
Where were you at that time?
I was at Eastern at the time.
Okay.
So, and I'd always wanted to go to a bigger college and such. So the funny thing is when I went there, I wasn't a Michigan State fan. And now 25 years later, I am like the biggest Michigan State fan, to the point that while I was there at college, I escorted Sparty.
Oh my God. How does that happen?
He was like a Sparty bodyguard, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no, Angela was working at the Student Alumni Foundation, and they were looking for people to escort Sparty, and you have to start off small. So I never got to do football games, but I got to do basketball games, and Sparty's not allowed to talk. So he or she needs people there to put him into the outfit, to get him out there, to come back in, because it's like 40, 50 degrees warmer in there than out. So they can only be on the court for so long. And that was my job. We did gymnastics, volleyball, basketball. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. So you were like the lone person, or one of the very few people that knew who Sparty was, or knew the people that.
Yeah. So usually there's 2 or 3 people that are Sparty.
Uh-huh.
Well, and I think this is also a good 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I think a lot of that has changed over the years.
Yeah. But I was one of the few people that knew who Sparty was. And, the best story I have for that is Michigan versus Michigan State, the game that we won by 51 points. So I was there courtside for that game. Magic was at that game. I like to say he shook the hand of the person on my left and my right and skipped me.
You shook the hand of the guy next to you,
Yep.
basically.
So, but about 15 seconds before the game ended, Sparty grabbed my arm and pulled me in, and I heard the person who it was say to me, he goes, "We're going to rush the court, make sure no one knocks me over." I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure. That's good." But that was like such an amazing experience. It was so much fun.
That was the game. Mateen Cleaves had like 20 assists, right?
Yes.
And then he was like, "What's up?" afterwards.
Yep.
Like everything was going crazy. Oh man, that was a game. They won the championship that year, right?
They won the championship that year. Yep.
That's killer. I was gonna ask you if you guys were there. If you were there,
I was
during
there.
the
Yep.
year.
Yeah, right there. And to be courtside too.
Yep.
It's kind of exciting and neat to be involved in some of those things.
That is so awesome. So you guys are obviously go through Michigan State together. How did you get together and start business together?
Well, okay. So I was a high school teacher prior to getting into real estate. Angela worked as a buyer for media for.
I was a media buyer negotiating with newspapers across the U.S.
But it was one of those things that we always knew we wanted to go into business together. We just didn't know what we were going to go into business with. So my school district I was in did some layoffs, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to start over. So I was actually flipping a house with Angela's uncle. And the realtors were like, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing this?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." So I sat down with some people, kind of looked into it, and decided, yes, this is something I would like to do. Got into real estate. And about 6-7 months into real estate, I'm just getting started. Angela had an opportunity for a buyout at her company.
Well, in terms of just rewinding, of like as he got into it, we kind of had an inkling of like, wow, this could be really cool. I could see long term, like 10 years from now, maybe I'd join you and I could see us doing this together someday.
10 years from now.
Yes, long time ago,
Right.
long time from now. But you're right at that like 7-month mark that, at that point you'd closed.
I'd closed 2 deals.
2 deals. And
I had
one
like one
pending.
pending. But the interesting thing on that is when I think of it later, we went from 2 salaried incomes to a year and a half later, only whatever we made coming in for us and 3 kids. So, I mean, we had a burn the boats type moment where we were all in.
We had to be.
If
no
you
other
don't
options.
be, what happened?
Right. Yeah. So there's no other option.
Yep.
When you put yourself in the position where the only choice you have is to succeed, imagine that's what happens.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Well, and then, so you have business partnerships, and I've had several partners on that, some of them related, some of them just partners, they've met friends, whatever they met through life. But now you talk about team, husband, wife, like, again, this is your whole family. You have 3 kids, like talk about that. I don't want to use motivation, but that fuel to work together.
Yes. No, a lot of fuel to work together. And, I'm sure we'll talk about it and such. it took us 6-9 months to really hone in how we would work together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because it takes time understanding that you have to be able to shut it off, right? But as spouses, and business owners, we really don't ever shut it off. So it was a process of learning what tasks each of us were doing, how we were going to go about the business, how we were not going to step on each other, and how we were going to be able to hold each other accountable, but at the same time, have it not affect our relationship.
And that's tough. That's easier said than done, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there are the emotions behind it all.
Well, and both of us are learning a brand new job at the same time. Right. So that made it very challenging. And so, we were with Keller Williams. They had great models. There's a lot of husband-wife teams that come along for that. But in terms of
the education was so important.
But, they had the formula. This is how you do it. Decide who does this, who does that. And we tried that and we failed. And it was not very good at the beginning because it's like, well, that was your job and you didn't do that, or this was this, or I would have done a better job at this. And so as we figured things out, what we realized and what, like you mentioned, Tricia, what a lot of our clients end up understanding is once we realized if we worked interchangeably, if we worked with all of our clients together and we were kind of just that synergy to pull it all together, then it all came together. And so one day he might do this job or I might do it or whatnot, but we have kind of our checklists of everything that needs to get done. And it's turned into this ultimate double check, because with both people knowing what needs to get done and being able to fill in of this one's busy, then I can just take the baton and go.
It's kind of like parenting.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
when you're a parent, you don't have a set of jobs that you do.
That's a very good visual. 'Cause that's the very first thing I thought of when you said that. Yeah.
Right. You just kind of jump in there and you take care of it.
Yeah.
You know, and if our
You're
person's
like, nope, nah, this is your mom's job. Wait till she gets home.
That's the truth, right?
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. No, I love that, because you do hear a lot like, oh, you need to do this set of things. You need to do this set of things. And to think like you can really interchangeably work and work together, and you probably bring completely different elements in
Yes.
the same conversation.
100%. And you know, it's interesting, like when we go out on listing appointments, right? So we try to do all of those things together where it's both of us, right? And as we're going through it, if one person is connecting more, then that person takes over a little bit, right? But we both have our strengths and weaknesses where we catch different things. So we're able to see it from a different point of view and able to add a little bit more value because of that.
Cover more ground too.
Yes.
Like, do you notice, like, as you're like, if one person's kind of leading the conversation and you hear something, do you then like have a chance to follow up with another, you come in with a question or something like that?
A little bit. What we do is very organic.
Uh-huh.
And then as some clients, and so often clients are husband and wife also. So then at least each one feels heard. And so that is something that we found that can make the process go smoother for everybody, because they feel more comfortable that there's someone, if the wife is quiet and, doesn't feel like she's getting engaged in the conversation, then I'm able to kind of pull that in or make her feel heard. And
Right, because it's really all about relationships, and how you build those relationships, how you foster those relationships. And if you come at it from that point of view, that you're creating a relationship there, then you're listening in a different way, because we've never thought of ourselves as salespeople. We've never tried to sell anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
if anything, from your background, I feel like we educate our clients. So we might talk to them too much and explain too many things, but then we've found that people tell us our communication is outstanding. So that way, because we don't believe in surprises, we think through every step of the way and make sure they're along with us.
And I think over my course of my career, anyways, the conversations I've had with the people that are actually the best salespeople are the people that are like, we don't look at ourselves as salespeople, because you're having kind of that natural, and it's really communication is the key to a healthy relationship, to a healthy, sale, to have healthy customers and clients, to have a healthy business. Like, that communication is key, and it's often the cause of all of our problems.
So, and especially, since we're both covering all this late at night, sometimes it's like, oh, did you take care of this? Did you? Oh, I did that. Okay. Oh,
I'm like, running through the checklist before you go to sleep.
Yeah, we never turn it off, unfortunately, our poor kids.
No, the 11:30 at night. No, okay, no problem. I'll go grab the computer. Did I remember to do that? Or let's look that up. Or you're always thinking about things, right? So it gives you that opportunity. But the nice thing is, you have people say, if you love what you're doing, you don't feel like it's work. It's kind of the same thing. Angela loves to say, we own our own business. We get to work any 80 hours a week we want. Right. But
we picked the 80.
We picked the
80.
80.
Yeah, it's a flexible schedule. That's why people get into real estate, right?
It's flexible. Yep.
Yeah, very flexible. Pick any 80 hours a week you want.
But I never feel like I'm overworking. And that's
key.
It's key. Yep.
Well, I think was it you that said when we were out here, your dad said?
Yeah, my dad's always said, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. And we're just living this dream here. It's been a decade now. And even as I got into it, there wasn't a layoff for me. There was a chance at a buyout that we had to decide together if we were going to do this or not. And with him only having closed so little, we knew just how scary that step would be. But I wasn't at the kind of level that I would get a golden parachute or anything like that. And this was such a huge opportunity, because if I decided to quit, I would be leaving with nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas, because this company that had bought my company out, and at that point in time, we had 7 people doing 19 people's worth of work, right? So the stress was unreal anyway. but to have that little bankroll that could be just a huge lump sum to say, go get started, go ahead and do it and figure this out. And so then that was sort of a nice little, what would you call it? A safety.
It was a little bit of a safety net. It helped out a little bit. It at a minimum, it allowed us to have insurance for the rest of the year, which as a small business owner, any of you small business owners out there know that is a huge expense.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. Yes. Yeah.
So it made a difference. And then we found that a lot of couples did like hiring other couples. So like in terms of just the appeal of real estate, and that we were really willing to work hard and hustle, because coming from that corporate perspective, when you are putting in, 50, 60 hours a week for the corporation, when all of a sudden you put that time in on your own business, all the small businesses can relate to this. It's astounding because you're the one that reaps the benefits, not your boss or your boss's boss or some other executives.
Yeah. How do you, because as soon as you said that, it made me think, because this is the problem I had is, how did two of you kind of starting off pretty similar same times, how do you structure your day? Because you're used to working 40, 50 hours. How do you all of a sudden structure that day? Are you going to the office or are you staying at home? How do you structure that?
Well, now our office is at home.
Yeah.
So 10 years in, we started our own brokerage last year. So we have a nice home office that we just get up and, the dog can come in and such. So it's a really great thing. But beginning, I tried to go to the office a lot more than she did. We found at the beginning, being separate sometimes helped, doing different things and such. But I really feel like the clock just didn't turn off. You just, when passion hit you, you sat down to work. One of the things over the years I've learned, I work really good from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. That is a time that if I sit down, I can get a lot done. Mm-hmm. And I am not really good, at 9 to 11 in the morning. So knowing that about myself, I can structure my day accordingly. And that seems to help a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes even, we'll just be, because there's also the balance of the kids, right? And sitting down to dinner with them and taking that time and being there when they're getting home from school and their activities is such a huge part
for both of
us that it wouldn't be unusual we'd put them to bed, and then we'd go and work and be on our computers across from each other for hours from, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, working on finding houses for people, working on, putting together marketing, anything of whatever it took, just to put that time in. And, then maybe that allowed us to go on some of those field trips or be there for the kids,
Right. Yep. Because, we've both been to Tony Robbins, and Tony likes to say that it's never a lack of resources. It's a lack of resourcefulness. So the whole idea of is you can find a way.
Yeah.
It's there for you.
Yep.
If you take our marketing that we did at the beginning, at first I walked door to door with my business card in my subdivision. And then I realized we get 200 free printouts a month at our brokerage. We created a 1-page flyer and I printed off 200 of them because that's what we could do. And then we moved from there to, sending out a few thousand a month and, getting a indicia and mailing them out. And now we do them digitally and we have them on email and such. But it's looking at what you have in front of you and what you can do with it.
Before we get back at it, a quick shout out for our sponsor, Playbook Builder, powered by AI. This show has always been about giving the resources and the tools to small business owners in order to grow and scale your businesses successfully. And so I'm so excited to partner with a company that does just that. If you've listened and heard any of our guests, you've heard talking about building process, developing and training, building culture, are all such important pieces in order to building a great company. Well, Playbook Builder, powered by AI, has come along and revolutionized the game on how you can do that for your team and people, whether you're onboarding new people, training and developing, continued training and developing, you're looking to scale your business or eventually sell, or most importantly, you're looking to build a legacy as a visionary. Playbook Builder powered by AI is able to solve those problems for you. For me as a consultant, I've been able to plug in, and it's so amazing for what I do for clients. I can now leave a legacy. And so, for example, I'm next week training a new hire for a company, and I've been able to build out the next month of her training program using Playbook Builder powered by AI. The cool thing about the AI, what does that do? What's the hardest part of building out a process? Taking the step by step and making it easy to learn. What the AI piece does is you can actually type in what process it is, whether you want to onboard, if you want to onboard a new employee, type in onboard a new employee and what type of industry you're in, and the AI will put together a foundation for you to build out your playbook. It is absolutely incredible. But don't take my word for it. Head on over to playbookbuilder.com, and these guys have set it up to where you can take this for a test run with no obligations. Plug in what kind of playbook you want to build. If it's a sales training playbook, for example, plug that in the description. And in the description, you can also put in what kind of industry you're in, and then hit generate, and it will generate a playbook for you. Impress from there, and you can take a 30-day free trial of the playbook system altogether. You said a couple really huge things, and I want to dive into like the self-awareness. One, the self-awareness that you have to probably take on to work together as a couple, right? How much you have to learn about yourself. But I think I've talked to so many people, whether business owners or not, that are, people that are maybe dreaming of being business owners that may be listening right now that don't know what they like. Don't know when they perform the best or when their peak time of day is. And like, how important is that to know, again, where you excel, where you're weak, even working together?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you've got to know. You got to set your limits, because even when we have conflict, it's like, all right, I'm going to take a lap.
Yeah.
Like, we're okay. Like, I love you. You love me. We're good. But I think we need a minute here, to just be able to have, it's a balancing act, right? So you need to always have balance.
And for couples out there, you need to know your spouse almost better than you know yourself, in terms of knowing what they're capable of, but also knowing what, I don't want to say triggers, but no, I don't want to say triggers. You want to know what the buttons are, but you want to know how to massage that situation.
Yep.
You want to know how to go through and how to get the most out of both of you within it. And I would say a lot of it's trial and error. A lot of it is like, hey, this didn't work. Let's try this. Or all of a sudden, wow, that was amazing. Let's build on that. And that's kind of how we found our direction of like, years ago, we would, when our business wasn't where it would be, we'd be like, it's time to throw stuff at the wall, right? What's going to work for us and for our personality that someone else can say to you, hey, this is the exact way to do it. But if it's not within your personality, it doesn't matter how hard you try.
Yep.
Because for the record, and I believe maybe more of our family members and whatnot, they aren't people to move, right? So some people, as they start real estate, they get tons of leads from family and friends. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, we really didn't. So we really, really had to just grind it out on our own. And that's where walking door to door and hand delivering value and content and coming from contribution. That's one of the things early on that we realized how important it was. It's about what value you give. What do you offer? And from there, the business comes back. And people want to work with us because we're giving contribution. We're, giving value, offering everything we can.
Well, and I love it because it's really tied into what you've done all along with Welcome to Livingston and, bringing in the different content. I love the movie and the appreciation events that you guys do. It's just different things giving back that you don't see everywhere.
Yeah. You got to pay it forward. You got to just give it out there. And in terms of just coming from a place of gratitude, and we're trying to teach this to the kids too. And boy, is that hard to get through to them. But so Rick, the old broker from where Keller Williams was, who has since passed away, and one of the people I most admire ever in my life, always had such wise things to say. But one of the things he did say is that some people, it doesn't matter if whatever it is coated in gold, or what is it? How do I say it? It would, it could be coated in gold.
Yep.
And they'd complain that it wasn't thick enough. right?
Yeah.
So it's about being grateful for whatever anything is, finding the gratitude in the day. And one of the things, tying back to the kids, every night we sit down to dinner, I ask them, what was the best part of your day? Because some days, and this has taught them that some days aren't the best days, right? Even when you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
But if you can focus in on, well, what was the best part of the bad day? That at least offers a silver lining, right? And then other days are so fantastic, you can't even make up your mind about what the best part was. But if you train your brain to start looking for the best that there is, then that exudes positivity.
100%.
That focuses on being grateful for your life, for that moment, for those opportunities.
I would imagine it sparks hope.
It
Yes.
does, yeah.
But then also we attract what we think about. And most of the time we're thinking about the bad day and the 3 things that may have went wrong in 24 hours, versus how many things went well. And it could be the smallest thing of I woke up today and I have 2 legs I can walk on. And
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's stuff that we take for granted until we don't have it.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's exactly
There's
it.
always little things to build on, right?
Yeah.
So you look at those things that are the positive things in your life and you're like, that was good.
Yeah.
Now how can that get better tomorrow?
You can always, so I do sales or do sales leadership consulting. And I had this team I was working with, and they had these 2 salespeople who were in basically the whole entire company. It was like a really Eeyore type mindset. And we had this whole, like through EOS, there's through their meetings, there's a intentionalism at the beginning that instead of starting out and, everybody doing the chit chat and then you're trying to settle into the meeting, it's intentional. We start the meeting on time. And instead of just getting straight to business, we do 2, a positive thing that happened in business and a positive thing that happened in personal life. And these 2 salespeople, basically the whole company, but these 2 salespeople specifically, always struggled finding something good personally. Wow. And it was like, come on, let's run through it. You woke up today, you got in your car and drove to work, like you have a functioning vehicle. Like, let's think about little things.
Right.
But like, if you don't have, if every single week it's hard for you to think of something good that's happening, you're going to fail in life.
100%.
Period.
Like you said, it's all of a sudden you're focusing on those negative things and it breeds more negative things. But
so your mind will find what you're looking for.
The mind will, exactly. It's like when you look for the car that you have, right? You buy a new car and all of a sudden like, how the hell is everyone driving the same damn car that I have? Well, they were there all along. You just never saw them.
I just believe I'm a trendsetter. Isn't it cool? Like when I first got my Harley, I thought at Brighton, nobody rode Harleys in Brighton. And then all of a sudden, all I can hear is the motorcycles and, and I see them wherever I go. And it's like, wow, when did Brighton turn into a biker town? They were always there. It didn't signal in my head that, the particular activation system, the filter, it didn't say that wasn't important to me.
Yeah.
There's so many things going on right now.
Right.
And we get to choose what we focus on.
100%.
Exactly it. And that is a choice, to your point, right? That people don't realize it. They just are kind of out there living their life. And honest to goodness, focus on something positive, because doesn't everybody want to be happy? I mean, I feel like we're freaking deliriously happy.
Right. Well, your brain doesn't know the difference between what's really happened and what you want to happen. So if you focus on what you want to happen, you're going to be surprised when those things start showing up in your life, because you're subconsciously making choices to get there.
I knew we'd be talking about this. This is why I'm like, this is going to be so much fun. But yeah, so I mean, that's what it was. You have the people out there that they will tell you that they would be happy if just something went right for them. Like, oh, my life's so miserable. I'd be so happy if this just happened. And then that happens. And again, the gold bar wasn't thick enough, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's still something that they're miserable about. And even if you solved all their problems, they would find something to be miserable about, or something like,
crazy.
I had this guy in my sales team once that we were talking about like in sales contests, right? Like he'd win stuff, but he wouldn't enter in the stuff and win his money. And I was like, dude, if you don't want that money, like, well, we'll split it. Like, why don't you want that money? He's like, well, it'll be taxed. Wow. I was like, yeah, but it's you still make more money than what you had yesterday.
Yeah.
Like it's taxed. He's like, I'm like, what if you won the lotto and you won, I call it $1 million? And he was like, yeah, it'd be taxed. And I'm like, but you still have more money, but if you have that mindset, you're never going to receive.
Right.
Yes.
100%. Well, we were talking about like, well, what do you think we'll be talking about in our things? What you said brought this idea of your big why, right? Yeah. So a lot of people don't realize how important it is to have a big why, a goal out there, and not a goal for a specific thing. You're not supposed to have a goal for like, I want to take a trip, right? But the reason behind that. And one of the things I've learned over the last 10 years is as you get more successful and you start getting those things that are on your big why has to move. It has to get bigger. It has to change to something else because you're always either going forward or going backward. And a lot of people don't realize that it's like, what are you working towards and why are you working towards that? And figure out what that is.
Yeah, because if not, stuff does get hard.
Right.
Selling real estate and there's so many real estate agents out there and you're starting off and you got to knock on doors and make calls.
Right.
It's a hard job,
It's hard.
Man.
And people are probably telling you no or not getting back with you. And it just happens, right? It's just the way it is out there when you're hustling. And so if you don't have a why, how do you keep doing it?
Exactly.
Yeah. You need that motivation.
Yeah.
And to Don's point, it's okay for that to change. So as you grow as a person, you want it to change. You want it to evolve.
Well, because at the beginning, I don't know what your why is when you talk about it, but I would imagine like starting off, you don't have salaries anymore. You have your family, right? Like if we don't make it, we're going to be starving and we can't, so that's a pretty big motivator. But as you're growing a business, as you're now having success and you're doing different things, that why's got to shift. It's not just about survival anymore, is it?
No, not at all. No, it's, and for me, I can share. So my big why was always giving experiences to my kids. Like what special experiences that can I give them to set them up for success, to get them where they want to go. Right. So now we're seeing them going places, doing those things. We have a kid in college in Boston, right? Yeah. One of the big goals I had was before each kid went into high school, we wanted to take them to Europe because we wanted their world to be so much bigger than Michigan. Right. But as those things occur, now I'm like, well, I'm making enough money to make those things happen. I need a bigger why to get me up in the morning, to propel me to what comes next. And it's just huge. Learning those things, knowing yourself, right?
Yep. It's going back and adjusting because again, most people don't, and they don't again realize what it is that drives them or make that adjustment. That's huge.
Right. Yeah, because the paycheck can't be the only thing that is pushing you, especially as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that driver. There is no paycheck.
Well, and what do you do with the paycheck? Because working with salespeople my whole life, everybody says money's the motivator, but that's not actually the motivator. Like you're not just holding on to your money and like smelling it and like Scrooge McDuck swimming in it. Like what are you doing with it?
Right. Yeah. What is it you say, Angela? Money's good for.
Well, and that's another Rickism. Money is good for the good it can do, right? A lot of people just bastardize money. They make money just the most horrible thing in the world. We have extended family that are like that. And the challenge behind that is that, money itself is not the root of all evil, even though I guess it could be. But it's maybe
the love of money
is
the root of all.
It's like that is.
Yes.
Yeah. But money is good for the good it can do. And for, whether it's donating to good causes, whether it's in terms of your children and pouring into them, if you use it the right way, it can be.
Right. Like take our podcast that we do.
Yep.
When we started the podcast, we started it because we wanted to give back and we wanted to bring businesses in and talk about what they did and what they were giving into the community and be a part of that community. We weren't starting that to bring in more business. It's wonderful if more business comes in because of it, but that's not the reasoning behind it. So the money that we pour into that is the good that it can do for the community and maybe a little bit for us as well. But, we get something out of it that's different than the paycheck. We're helping other people.
Yeah.
In one of our early podcasts, what I was so excited about was when the restaurants were shut down and it was a chef and he would come in and cook for people that people wanted, actual homemade, not homemade, but like out of a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And so they could have that in their house. And then here he was having this budding business. And so what was kind of wild about that is after we had him on the podcast, we realized what a platform this was. And his phone started ringing and he started getting business and clients from what advertising and, promotion publicity we got for him. And that was such a high to be able to do that for these other small businesses that we love and are in circles with of, if we can build them up, then it's just a great way to celebrate our community.
I can so resonate. That's the reason why I do it. I get so much enjoyment. Like I was explaining to Julian Williams the other day. I just kind of had this visual the other day because it was like, you'll get this. We'll be speed dating for a whole entire week. So like it's like you ever go on a cruise?
Yep.
Like I always marvel at the cruise people because they give you this experience like you're the only ones that have ever done it. And then you get off the boat and they do it all over again. It's like constant. Like they don't have days off. They just one group of people to the next group of people, to the next group of people. And it's so cool because as we do the podcast, it's like I get to like have like a really intimate relationship with my guests. Like I'm messaging them, I'm messaging them every day. Like this happened. Like here's this clip. Like here's this. Like I'm super excited. We're talking back and forth. We get to build this really cool relationship, and then Thursday hit and it's a new one, and it's like, not that I lose touch with those people because what's really cool is I've had people that have been guests several times and like I've used this platform to continue to grow my relationships with really awesome people, but to be able to put spotlights on those people, to be able to share their stories in 30 to 60 second clips. We talked about them beforehand, how the shorts and the reels and everything have been blowing up, and it's so cool, when the ATA guys come on.
Yeah.
And they were on
they
your
are
podcast.
such great guys.
They are phenomenal guys. But like when they're on and they're like messaging me like, oh my God, these people keep like calling us up and like my family, my friends, they're loving this episode. And then like I'm seeing it blow up and people are commenting. It is so cool to be able to put a spotlight on people like that because most people walk through life not being able to feel this special.
Exactly.
And shout out to Speakeasy in the studio.
Oh my gosh, what a great resource they are.
For bringing this experience to us because we are really lucky here in Livingston to be able to have something like this.
Yep.
Really are.
I described it like Motown earlier. Like we get to do these crossovers, right? We have so much. We have like this inner talent. It's like going to Barry Gordy's office in Motown in Detroit. Like, you get to build these relationships. And I had a crossover with Jason Ballard, who lives in Kentucky. But I met him through here.
Right. Yeah. Those relationships are so important, and it's so unique to meet the different people and see what they're doing.
Yes.
See how they're giving back, see how they're growing. And, I know from our podcast, and I'm sure from yours, you see so many similarities in stories too.
Yeah. Yep.
About where people came from and what they're putting into it.
Well, and who you surround yourself with, right? That's the whole old adage that I'm sure part of that is what podcasts are you listening to and what are you spending your time on? Are you focused on bettering yourself or are you focused on just waiting the time out,
I would imagine the people that are listening to this podcast are not the ones that are like not wanting to grow and change.
True.
You know what I mean?
They're
because
growth
again, it's all growth minded. You're not going to sit down and
100%.
listen to this unless you want to change, grow, develop.
Right. One of the things I read a number of years ago, and I've heard other people say it, is the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yes.
And if the group that you're with isn't growing, then odds are you're not growing. And sometimes you have to look at that and say, I need to connect with people that have the same growth mindset I have, because people that are growth mindseted, they're not pushing each other down. They're building each other up.
Yep. I just recently got a referral for somebody to be on this show because she has an incredible story, and I had a phenomenal conversation with her. She does have an incredible story, but I was like, you're not there yet? Like you're still in it. And if we have you on, people are just be like, it's kind of depressing, like there's no, but what I can tell you is everything you're telling me, you're around the right people. And I can say, let's circle back, in a few months down the road, let's circle back and have another conversation because I can see what you're doing and you're growing and all these things. But right now there's no happy ending to the story that we can, we want to have that. So it's not just people tuning in. It's like this tragic story that that's the way it ended. Like that's where we're at.
Yeah.
But I can tell by, what she's doing in the community and what she's giving back and the people that she's surrounding herself around. It's those 5 people, right?
Yeah.
who she was before was around a different crowd of people. Now she's got introduced to a different set of people in life, and they're bringing her into their orbit, and she's going to naturally learn and grow from that. She's going to naturally better her life just from a different set of thinking.
Right. And it's people like that realize to get where you want to go, it's not how do I get there? It's who do I need to become to be there. Right. And people like that, they realize that, and they're surrounding themselves with different people, and they may not recognize the changes that are happening within themselves. But if you look at even us, the people we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago are not the people we are now.
Not even close.
I wouldn't even recognize myself from 20 years ago versus who I am today.
We were just talking about it the other day, because he's like, I used to love all those self-help books and, motivational.
Oh my God. I made fun of self-help books for years, and now I own like 50 of them.
Yeah, you love them. You're more into it than I am.
I'm constantly reading them.
What changed? How did that flip?
That's a really good question. I think it's just the internal growth that you wanted to have growth. And I've had that happen at certain points in my life. Like, the interesting thing, to go back to when Angela and me started dating, about 6 months before we started dating, I had a epiphany within myself where I said, I want to be to other people the person that I think that I am, not the person that they want me to be. And it fundamentally changed the way I approached people. And I think that really changed in how she viewed me.
Oh, absolutely. Because you were always trying to be whoever it is that you thought everyone wanted to see. And then once you were yourself, then all of a sudden, that's what I was attracted to. Like I wanted to be with the person that you were, that I never knew was there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I just got those chills. That's phenomenal. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Like, I had this client, and I've told this story several times, so if you're a listener, I'm sorry. But it was one of those moments that was like, he was talking about how he just wasn't finding any value in his friendships. He's had these friendships since, middle school. And we were talking about the depth of it. And in high school, he was a all-state athlete, wrestler, football player, all these things. But the real guy there was kind of an artsy guy, and, more breath work and, just different than what that competitor was. And so when he's like around his friends, he was trying to be like what they thought he was and what he'd always pretended to be. And he was like, I fear that if I am really me, that they won't like me. And I'm like, and so what? What if they don't? Because right now, every time you come to me, you're telling me all this stress about how it's so painful to hang out with these people, but you have to hang out with them every week, because if not, you're going to disappoint them. And if they don't like you, so what?
Yeah.
Right.
And if they do like you and they're like, oh my God, Nick, we never knew that was there, then awesome. You've opened up a whole, maybe someone finds you for the first time. It's like, wow, and now you can hang out with your friends and be you. And how does that change life for you?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And then just in terms of our relationship, I just feel like we've been so strong, but always getting stronger. And I don't even know how we do it, but we've had people at like the Tony Robbins seminars we've been to, like blindly, separately walk up to us and say, wow, what you have there is amazing, and it's just astounding for what people see from the outside, and trying to replay in my head, what was it that they saw that they made a point to want to come and say, it was just, I think the thoughtful things. You went and got a snack, and so you got me a snack too, or little gestures. He said something that kind of, I felt like applies. And so I would kind of rub your back and say, yeah, those little gestures, little things.
Yeah. Yep.
How you communicate with that other person.
What's so awesome about that, because we talked about the kids, like the kids see that too, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the things, if strangers are seeing it, the kids see it, and, and you can kind of predict what their relationships will be like.
100%. You can really see, because you're always teaching other people, right? Even when you don't think you're teaching at all. So for your kids, they see how you interact. They see how you treat your spouse, right? They see those relationships. So then when they start to form relationships, they know a basis of what a healthy one looks like. And on the flip side, if you have an unhealthy relationship, your kids see that as well, unfortunately. So you really need to look at that, because when all of a sudden they go and they're like, well, this isn't working out and this isn't working out, it all goes back to, what were you intentionally or unintentionally teaching them?
Yes.
That doesn't mean that they're going to repeat it, though.
It does
because
not.
we've seen
No.
time and time again where kids say, I
won't be that.
learned. I'm
Yep.
not going to do
100%.
that.
Yep.
I think that comes down to mindset too, because there are people. I think there's somebody who made this quote that you are the result of your parents, whether it's good or bad.
Well, that's the truth, though.
Because like either you're out there saying like, man, my parents were smokers, they did this, they did this, they did this. I vowed that I would never be that way.
Right.
And then there's like extremely successful people that walk this narrow line, right? Because they learned from their parents. They didn't want to live life like that. And then you have people that are like, yeah, I just, this is what I saw. My dad beat my mom and he smoked and he did all these things. And that's what it's just life.
Right.
Yeah.
I do this because I've seen it.
Isn't it crazy?
We blame our circumstances, or our circumstances are the reason why we're at where we're at, good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
And we have the power to frame. And what I was thinking about earlier that I totally forgot, totally mind blown, is having the gratitude that as humans, we're the only species that are allowed to go against our nature and adjust and shift, and we can question our thought.
Right.
If we're in a negative, like we're in a pity party. Sometimes it's okay. It's okay. I think it's okay to expel those emotions, have a little bit of a pity party, and then pick yourself up.
Yep. Oh, exactly.
Right.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Ask yourself a question. Is this really as bad as I think it is?
Yeah.
Right.
How can I put this in a better place? Who do I know that has been through this before that I could ask some questions, ask advice?
Right.
Yeah.
Thinking about empowering questions and just shifting it, we're the only species that can do that.
Yeah.
Birds act by their nature, right? They do.
Right.
They just repeat the same thing every single day. They don't say, oh, that thing happened yesterday. I'm going to make an adjustment. And, and today I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. to get the worms.
Exactly. Yeah, right,
Like,
it's a human experience,
It is.
And it really is remarkable when you think about it, of, how do you do that? And I think some people have greater wherewithal than others. And I think part of it too, as a parent, is, I know with us, we made sure that our kids met with adversity. So if there was a challenge, we weren't rushing over there to fix it for them. Oh, wow, that didn't work out. Good.
She has to remind me, though, because I love to come in and fix things.
Yes, he does.
It's very difficult for me to hold back sometimes, But and I've learned that with our son that's in college a lot of like, he's doing his own thing. I don't have to take care of it for him. It's a tough ask.
Yeah.
So tough.
She's really helped me with that.
But I feel like they've done well in terms of that side of adversity. And so that way we can still look to the positive parts, but you can't experience those highs if you don't have the lows, and there's nowhere to go but up. I mean, in terms of real estate, I remember once we had a 24-hour period where we had 3 deals fall through.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's,
you go from counting the money almost
to to be like, holy smokes. And you just do the best you can. And it just is kind of to focus on the right things and keep it into perspective and have that long game to know that it's not just this moment, and as people relate to other people and communicate and relationships, it's not that quick, whatever, it's treating people the right way, time over time, and doing the right thing time and time again.
Yep.
And it all pulls through.
It does. It's a muscle you have to build, right?
It's a muscle. It is absolutely a muscle.
Yep.
It's one we don't talk about often.
No. And I look at it over the years and how that muscle has grown, you may not know I had cancer.
Yeah, no.
So I had cancer.
We did talk about this. Yes.
Yeah. So I had cancer back in 2000, and I was not the strong person I am now then, so it was interesting to see the growth, because I had I was under, not depression, but
you were in a funk, man.
I was in a funk for about 6-8 months.
Yeah.
Just because it's one of those things that comes in from the outside and it hits you and it shatters your thought of this is the way things are supposed to be, and I don't talk about cancer hardly at all because I feel like I didn't have to have chemo. I didn't have to have radiation. I got very lucky that the
Early
tumor
stages.
hadn't burst. So they just went in and took it out, and I had a couple surgeries. But mentally, that was tough at the time.
'Cause
And you
didn't
build that
know.
muscle.
Yeah. You didn't know what stage it is early on. And it just is scary because you were 26.
26. Yeah, I was 26 years old. I got diagnosed the day day before we were supposed to leave for our honeymoon.
I'm like, I said no, and then I was instantly like, I do remember you telling me this story. Yes. Insane. So, I mean, it's especially at 26, there's probably a lot of questioning. Why me? Like, why did it choose me?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's one of those things and I think once I came out of that and then I changed careers and I did some other things and everything, that you put yourself into a thing of like, no, this is who I want to be. This is where I want to go. So how do I get there and how do we start building? And, thankfully with such a strong relationship with Angela, it was never, how am I going to build this? It's how are we going to build this, which makes a huge difference because you don't have to shoulder everything.
Yeah.
I only have to shoulder the load I want to shoulder and she'll take care of the rest.
Beautiful. It's one of those things like I learned, the reason why I've done this in the first place is because I've learned from the people that I talk to. It all started off in the coffee shops, talking to people that I just admired or business owners. And as I sit down and talk to them, I'd hear their story and hear they overcame cancer, or they overcame these things that you just never knew, and what in their relationships and all of it. And it was like, I was becoming a better person because of it. And sitting here right now, like, hey, I'm the host, but I'm learning from you because I work with my wife. And, and
she's a sweetheart, by the way.
She is. She's amazing. But again, we have, like, when somebody said something a couple of years ago, like, oh, you're so lucky you're married to Jason. He's got all this energy. And she was like, well, you got to realize sometimes is that like great characteristics on somebody is something like, I love his energy, but sometimes that drives me crazy. Like some things like as as then you start working together and you have to really, really figure it out. For me and her, I'm that visionary of like, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And then, and actually I did have her on. So we were the only couple, but dual couple outside of me and her. Yeah. But talking about like, I used to think like, why are you pissing my Cheerios? Like, why are you like, why are you trying to tear everything down that I'm thinking of? I had to learn like a lot about her in order to realize, oh, you're just trying to help me. You're really like, I need you actually really, really bad.
Yeah, because you balance each other out.
Yeah.
That she doesn't have that same kind of energy, but she has this calmness. And she's amazing. And you're amazing too. But in terms of like I talked about covering more ground, like, together, you're unstoppable. The first year when he was trying to do his jobs and I was trying to do mine, I think we closed 10 houses. But then the second year, once we realized, let's leverage each other and find the synergy, we closed 30. So it was like off the hook. Like once we had it together, it just clicked.
That's killer.
And then we started having fun. And before we were fighting each other, it's like you're fighting the current. It's like those fish, instead of swimming upstream, we realized we just have to swim downstream. And it just flew.
That's killer. It's like going through the experience of the coffee, and Gracie's always been doing her thing and then I'm doing my thing, and we've mixed sometimes, but recently it's been more working together, kind of like what you two are in. So it's stepping into that. But what was really cool is like the coffee thing. I'm easily excitable, as you can imagine. And so I'm out there and we're having a conversation with the vendor, and the vendor's just as excited as I am to get rolling. And she pulls out the agreement and I'm like, boom, let's sign it. She goes to walk away to make a copy. Gracie looks at me like, you signed that pretty quickly. I was like, are you not as excited as I am? She's like, yeah, I'm excited, but there's questions. Like there's things that we need to ask before we just go with this, right? And I was like, ooh, you're right. It was like a couple of years ago, I'd been like, what? Why do you, like maybe even a few years ago, like, why aren't you excited? It's like, I gotta, you're right. And so when Melanie came back, I'm like, actually, Gracie has some questions, she has some good questions. And then we were able to, and it's like, I left afterwards, like, wow, this is like together we can conquer the world. Right.
Honestly, that's how it works.
It is, because it's like, it's the yin and the yang, right? And they work together. And when we realize how our relationship works together, then all of a sudden becomes stronger in terms of how it relates to other people and relates to the world, because we have a much wider base and a stronger base that we're coming from. So like, with you, she's bringing up questions that you're like, didn't think to ask, or you may have thought to ask, but you're so excited about it, where she's able to come in and say like, oh, wait a minute, let's hit A, B, and C. We're going to get to D,
Yep.
Let's not jump the steps.
But then you probably have a better product later, right?
Yes.
Because then there's fewer surprises the more you think through. And if she's that thinking through person, then effectively it's not just that first burst of excitement with you, that you'll be able to have that, the stamina to follow through of having the best possible product.
It's
right?
the best example ever, because literally they were telling me that the flavor that we have for our first coffee, it's macadamia nut, and they told me that they could probably bring it back, and so there was like a iffiness on it. But I was like, I thought in my mind, like, if you're saying probably and you're as excited as I am, you're going to make it happen. Gracie's like got back and was like, so before we do this, what do we need to do in order to assure this is going to happen? She was like, we'll make it happen. Like, right. So she got the commitment with just one like question, right? Like, and there was so much more, but that was the moment that was like, oh dang, like I need her to know, like what I can see what you're saying when you two combined together and did your meetings together, and like how that changes the element, because I felt like, wow, like we could go into any negotiation between like my excitement and energy level and her like rationale and questions and like logic, like we can do this. Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's fun.
It's like fire.
So that's again another reason why I was excited to talk to you two, because you're further along. We've been kind of dabbling with this, but it's I win this whole rant because I'm learning from you two and just listening to you. So I know everyone else will too. Yeah,
no, and it's I would say to people out there that are, and we've thought in the past, and we haven't gone through with it, of there should be almost like a support group. You go to these, referral groups or BNI groups and everything. There should be one that is just for couples. SiriusNet, yes.
Yeah, we got to use the right
couples.
Yeah, that's only couples in business, because it's a unique set of skills and circumstances. And to have someone else to say, I'm going through the same things you're going through. This is how I figured it out. This is how further along I am. To have that support network, because people that aren't couples working together don't understand the challenges that come from it or the difference of success, because it's unique.
Yeah. So for those couples that work together, honest to goodness, it'd be nice to get them all in the same place.
In the same one, yeah.
That's a killer idea. That's a really, really good idea.
That was definitely his idea. He's been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, for about a year now. To have a SiriusNet, or to have a meet for coffee, right? Yeah. Of, what are you doing within those things? Because it's a different schedule. It's a different mindset. It's, and there's so much that can come from it if you give it the time and the space that it needs.
That's huge. I think you're onto something.
It's been so neat to always have different ideas. And in a lot of the things as we go through, some of them have been his, some of them have been mine, but from idea to actual execution, it becomes both of us working on it.
Yep.
That makes it really fun. It is sort of a team effort on everything.
Speaking of team, what's that like then as you grow outside of yourselves and start adding team members?
That was real interesting, because we tried to do that.
Yeah.
So we, about 2.5 years ago, we decided, hey, we're going to grow a team. So we brought in some admin, we brought in some agents underneath us, and we started to do that. And we realized after a while that it was taking us away from the things that we wanted to do. And it was changing the synergy that we had, because then I'm coming in and I'm doing team meetings and we're doing one-on-ones and we're taking those phone calls to help other people out and everything. Not that it's something that we didn't enjoy doing. It's just, it wasn't where our passion was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, for some people that might be the exact right thing to do. But it wasn't for us.
So when we went off on our own, we just kind of peeled back and brought it back to just him and I. And be able to be there for our clients and focus on them and less on the team, and trying to do that whole team building, manager, all of that. And it's tougher in terms of, slipping away for, vacation or whatnot, but we're still able to manage it. And in terms of having us together in our own brokerage, like that has been such a relief and allowed us to really just do the part of the jobs that we enjoy.
It brought a little bit of the independence back that we wanted.
I was gonna say, what's that been like? That's been really cool. It was really cool to see you both split out. Has it been a year? Or
It was December before this last one. So It's been about 14, 15 months now.
Yep.
We just love it. I love it. Because we were brokers for about 6 years. So it had come to a point where I wasn't asking questions anymore. We knew the answers to the questions, and I would still go talk to our broker to get, kind of like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Am I right? Well, yeah, you're right. So we knew that we could do it ourselves. And, and the community's been so supportive of that. And that's amazing. And it allows us to have that independence. And, it's funny when you have more time on things, new stuff comes in. So like I'm president of the Livingston County Association of Realtors this year. So, we're always wearing different hats.
And coming back to the volunteer work and
it helped us with all of that. And we loved our events. You said before, we do our event at the Howell Theater every year where we show It's a Wonderful Life and another Christmas movie. We've done, U-Picks at Spicer's. We've done paint and pours. Last year we did a great event at Castaway Cafe where we brought in clients with the kids and everything. And, Angela's the one that organizes all those things. So I'm
the party planner.
She's the party planner. That's the hat that she gets to wear. I just get to come in and look like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's really cool. You mentioned that. And I'm sorry if you said, I just want to say, but you mentioned like not selling and kind of your education experience comes in. Is that kind of how, like, are you blending that marketing experience, like with the newsletters and stuff like that? How do you blend that in your past experiences?
I think a little bit. I think we are very education oriented as well. And in terms of offering kind of context into what's going on in that moment. And so I do think together we definitely very much educate our clients. And we do it in different ways and explain things differently. But in terms of the marketing, that's true. I do tend to focus in a little bit more on the marketing, but he's better on everything with the computer. So he's actually doing the newsletter and the Canva and the social media, and he's fantastic.
But the events are usually her ideas.
Yeah.
So she does a really good job with that.
And then that gives me a chance to pick up the phone and call people because I'm not one to just pick up and call and ask for business. Hey, who do you know today that might be wanting to buy or sell or invest in real estate? Like, I just like, ew, I need to go take a shower now. The sleaze factor. We always focused on being the realtor that we would have wanted, right? And so it's just a matter of being friends with our clients and
constantly providing value and giving resources.
Exactly.
And one of
it's a chance to see them again because that's the one thing I do miss. After we're done with the transaction, we might still catch up from time to time, but we don't get to see them as often. And we've become friends with so many of them.
Yeah.
And it's so having these events allow us to just reconnect, and it's a reason to call and see how things are going and what's going on in their lives.
Drivers, like a reason to call people that's like not selling them,
yes.
Exactly.
Inviting them to an event. Or Gracie worked for years at the Harley dealership here in town, and that was a big driver for them. They'd have weekends where they'd have a cookout. And so like all week long, she's calling people like, hey, I want to invite you to the cookout because they knew if they got people in, they're going to sit, she's going to sit them on a bike and, like have a conversation, and there'd be so much more sales because people would come in. But there's a reason, just like inviting them to a party, inviting them to an event, like having a driver that's outside of, I'm just here. Hey, it's time to warranty your, or time to look at new bikes, right?
Right. Exactly.
You've had your bike for 2 years. It's time to come in and look at new ones.
So year before last, it was funny because I was talking about that independence we have, right, of owning our own brokerage and doing things and everything. So last year, Halloween, I was up at Rural King, and their pumpkins were looking really good, and they were kind of cheap and everything. So I called her up, and I came home with like 75 pumpkins in my vehicle. And I was like, we're dropping pumpkins off to all of our clients here. So, but it was a lot of fun, and it gave us an opportunity to see people. But, you know, if we didn't own our own business, we weren't doing our own thing. That's not something I would be like, hey, I'm pulling out the credit card and I'm buying pumpkins and this is what we're doing.
Yeah. But in terms of those ideas and going with them and just.
That's a really cool idea. Who delivers pumpkins to people? That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. We didn't make it to everybody, but like, and I don't think it was 75.
We made sure most of the ones that had little kids.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be coming by. We're going to put a pumpkin on your porch, you know.
That's super cool.
It was fun.
It was neat. And it was early enough in the season that they hadn't picked, in most cases, I think 1 or 2 was like, well, looks like they get another pumpkin, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was fun to do, you know. Just kind of little surprise ambush.
Yeah, no, that's super fun. That's so much fun. So what's next? Working on now.
Wow. You want to take this one?
No, I think you should.
You know, we have a lot of ideas in head on what's next and such. I mean, obviously we're trying to build our business up, and we're trying to build Welcome to Livingston, which we love being able to do podcasts and bring people in. I think it gives us a different outlet, and we're just trying to give back in different ways. I mean, we're very motivational based. We're very mindset based. So we're looking at things in that as well and such, and just always trying to grow. You have to be always moving the goalposts, you know. So it's what's next is continuing to grow, continuing to build, and just trying to give as much value to our clients, to the community as possible, while at the same time, you know, being parents and pouring into our kids. We've been talking lately about our kids are amazing they're at amazing points in their life. You know, we have one, like I said, he's in college in Boston. He had a dream. He worked really hard, and he's off at film school. You know, our middle son is center snare on the drum line, and he's a section leader, and his goal is to be on the MSU drum line. So cool. 2 days a week, I'm driving up to MSU to get him lessons. So, you know, it's those things that we do. So,
and that's only his sophomore year. So, I mean, he still has a couple years left, and he's on track. And just the growth we've seen in him and interest in reading some of these self-help books, and
we actually got him to start reading a self-help book. Yeah. I'm very excited because the older one never wanted to read one, but now Colin is reading one, so it's really cool. He is reading the Compound Effect.
Oh, good one.
Which is a great book. I thought it was a nice one to start him off with because it's an easy read, but it talks about how those little things you do each day build up. And where you are a year from now, if you're just doing those tiny little things, you won't even recognize the person you are a year from now. So we're hoping that, you know, since he's gotten some, and he may be going to a Tony Robbins event this summer.
We're really trying. We're hoping for that. It's a youth leadership summit. Awesome. That he's willing to apply for and check out.
Yeah, so he's going to go through the interview process, and we'll see.
Yeah. And then our youngest is all about cheer, and she is really focused in on that. Very recently in her middle school, all the girls were in round 1, but only 12 got to be in round 2 and 16 in round 3. And she was in each one of them.
Wow.
And she worked really, really hard. And now even in the off season, we know, you know, the younger girls that are coming up that are very, very talented, that she really needs to up her game. And so we're doing gymnastics lessons. And that was when I kind of flipped out for a minute. She was at school going, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, like you have cheer practice right now." And she's like, "No, I needed my shorts, so I kind of hoped you'd bring them up." And I'm like, "Oh no, sorry." So, but she's just really, really focused in there, and she's just so beautiful. It'd be neat to see what we do with some of that. You know, there's
but our focus is really, you know, the funny thing is for us, it's never about us. I really think that for the two of us, where we don't need the personal accolades, we kind of sit back and we pour into our clients, we pour into our kids, and it's what we can give to other people. And, you know, I don't do as much volunteer work as I should. She does a little bit better at that, but it's all about being able to take the time to give what you can give, because, you know, we're in a good place, and how can we help others get to a better place?
That's so cool. I loved the book was The Compound Effect, because I feel like that's really, I mean, it could sum up this whole entire conversation,
Yes.
right? It's the little things that you did consistently throughout all these years that have gotten your growth, your change, your business, your relationship, right, to where you don't feel like you're working a single day in your life. You have a great relationship, great kids, right? It's like all these things that are, it's what you've built,
Right.
consistently.
Yeah. It's just hard work, showing up every day, time on task, over time.
Yeah.
I will say that your coffee is an inspiration, and that has gotten my brain totally thinking. Like, we're not ones to start our own coffee, but like just that concept of that, the marketer in me is like, wow, how fun would it be to do like a wall calendar for Welcome to Livingston? And then we could have like, the different people that have been on podcast, and just, there's like 100 different things. So 2025, that's one I like to kind of
really
think
cool.
about.
You never know what comes about in on it. Was just a guy that Dylan England, actually, I don't know if you were on the SiriusNet call when he was on. He was a guest on one of our meetings, and I had met him. I'd been introduced to him by a former client of mine, because he had a podcast out in Taylor. He's a podcast out in Taylor that does something similar to this. And so I saw him at the SiriusNet. He was a guest of Steve's, and he came on. And I was like, "Hey, let's connect again." And long story short, he ended up being on the podcast. And as we were talking, he was like, "Yeah, just start monetizing podcasts and how to figure it out." And he was like, "I'm doing something kind of different." He was like, "I got this like coffee, and was like, I got this roaster that I called and asked if she'd make a coffee, the podcast brew." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's genius." I was like. And I looked at Grant through the window. I'm like, "Grant, we've got coffee and grit. How do we not have a coffee?" And he was like, "Dude, you should call it Lion's Breath." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I've told this story so many times, so I'm sorry everybody's listening. But if he wouldn't have said that, it was, if he wouldn't have said Lion's Breath, it probably would have went nowhere. So I got to give Grant all of his credit, because he came up with this really cool name. And the next day I threw it out on Facebook, like, "Who's ready for Lion's Breath?" And I got so many responses from it, and then continued everywhere I'd go, like, there's people that in life through your kids' events and like, just family, friends and stuff like that, they will never ask you about your business. Yeah. Like, I've had my business for 6 years. They won't touch that. Like, ask you how the business is going and stuff like that. But then you're out and about and it's like, "Hey, I see you're in the coffee business now." Like, "Oh, you have been seeing my posts. Okay." You're like, all these people. It's like, I've got to do this. I've got to run with this.
It's brilliant. Like, there's so many things when it comes to podcasts that you can do with things.
Yeah.
Like, and I think, real estate's like this. What have you done for me lately? What comes next? So that sort of trained us to be thinking that too, that we always have like 100 ideas in the hopper.
Yeah. And we've seen your podcast just explode.
Uh-huh.
So it's amazing to see, they do such a good job here, like you said before, but put yourself in the room with the right people and the right things happen, right?
That's absolutely it.
Yep.
I wouldn't be here in the studio if it wasn't for the people that I've had on the podcast, right? It's surrounding yourself around the right people.
Right.
Like, from day one, it's been 4 years. Yesterday, my first clip that I put out for Coffee and Grit was on my Facebook memories 4 years ago. And the very first guest I had, his name's Rafid Bona. He's out in like Royal Oak, West Bloomfield area. And I've got asked all the time, like, "Your first episode must have sucked, huh?" Like, because you just think that, like, no, it was really good. Like, I had great quality guests that have been on. Right. Episode number 2 is Desi Maynor, who has a podcast here. Like, I'm like, I've had amazing people from day one. I just had amateur equipment, but it ended up all right. You listened to the Sparkle episode and you said it was good. That was, both her episodes were my old school equipment back then. So it's gotten so much better because of this, but again, it's consistency, because Rob says all the time, I've heard him say all the time, like, you're in the top, 10% of podcasters if you get past episode number 5.
Wow.
It's just consistency.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just showing up and doing it over and over and over again, because there's so many people I've talked to that have started a podcast and have stopped by episode 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Here we are. We're about to go in next week and record episodes 79 and 80.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just happened. It's, again, time on task, but there's always, like you said, all of a sudden, people are asking you, "You're in the coffee business now." You didn't know they were listening, but they're out there listening.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you have an audience, just give them content.
It's getting really cool, because that was the first time I've had a sponsor and everything, and there's been stuff with that, but in people on the show getting hooked up, and I've gotten clients from it. But the coffee thing was the first time I was like, wow, this thing really has legs, because I didn't know how many people again, I think that people don't ask you about the business, but they're listening. They're
Yes.
watching, right? Like they had to have been, or they wouldn't have seen that or heard. It was Trisha Turner that was like, hey, like she reached out to me before I even put that post out. Like, hey, what about this lion's breath? Like what's going on with this coffee?
Right.
You're going to bring it to life. You should bring it to the in-person event at SiriusNet. And I was like, it's just an inkling of an idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when people keep asking about it, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It just so happened I had a relationship that it was the best coffee I'd ever tasted in my life when I was a sales director out in Goodrich. And when Grant said lion's breath, I'm like, I think of something majestic when I think of lion's breath. I don't think of zebra and wildebeest and stuff like that, like raw meat. But
Right.
but thinking of something majestic to start your day off with, and this is the best coffee I've ever had in my life. I'm gonna call them up. Actually, I tagged them in the post and said, would you be interested? And they said, call us.
That's
And
awesome.
That is so cool. And it totally works with your logo.
Works with the logo. And again, Gracie did all the design work for the bag, for the label. So it's really cool to kind of bring it together.
Awesome.
That is so fantastic.
This has been awesome. Thank you both so much for coming down. This has been everything that I knew it would be. So
Well, thank you for having us. We've been looking forward to it. So this has been amazing.
Yeah, we're going to have you on our podcast. I'll
Let's
get
do
you
it.
in the calendar here. And, it's so neat to do that kind of cross-promotional.
it really is. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.